Here we go now. Welcome back to Urbanicity Television. I'm your host, Martina Scalenzi. Joining me for the second segment today is Mark Coakley. Now, I got to know, I first heard of Mark Coakley, I don't even know what year it would be,
2000?
but I remember you were in a debate. You were running for the Green Party.
Yeah, that was 2000.
Yeah, 2000. There we go. So, and then long into the future, I met you again as a contributor for Urbanicity.
Yes,
which is really cool. But I wanted to bring you on here not just because of Urbanicity, but because you have an interesting story and you're doing some interesting stuff. So we talked earlier about Mark Coakley 1 and Mark Coakley 2.0, and Mark Coakley 1 was a lawyer. You were in fact a lawyer, and you ran for the Green Party.
Yep.
But then you transitioned, and now you are an author, and you write for Urbanicity, and you're heavily involved in Ainslie, and you kind of led the fight against the Prince Philip school closure.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you made that transition, and why you made that transition.
Well, it's a strange story in some ways. When I finished high school, I had no idea really what I wanted to do, but I know I enjoyed writing, and that I got a good reaction from that. So I thought, okay, I'll be a professional writer. And I lived in poverty for maybe half a year, and my parents convinced me, no, you should get a university degree of some kind.
Yeah.
What kind, I didn't really know. So I ended up studying journalism at first, and through a complicated series of events, I ended up going to law school. So I got a degree in law, and then at that time I could have said, okay, I have my degree, go my artistic route.
Sure.
But I didn't. I ended up becoming a lawyer, and one thing led to another, and I spent 11 years actually practicing law.
Wow.
But I really wasn't that happy. I was good at some parts of the law. I think I was pretty good in the courtroom, but in terms of the huge amount of research and hard work behind the scenes that the top lawyers have to do, I found it quite boring. So I realized I need to find a different career, so I moved from the law to legal writing. I would get these cases, and I would summarize them for this legal database. So I spent my time working at home in the law, but as a writer. Got frustrated with that, so I wanted to do something a little bit more creative. So I went a little bit farther from being a lawyer to writing about lawyers. So my first book, Tip and Trade, is about two guys I went to law school with, and their tragic misadventures in insider trading in the stock market. Yeah. And then I got another book, which was about crime, but not about lawyers this time. This time was about regular guys doing crime. Hidden Harvest, which is about North America's largest cannabis grow-op up in Barrie. They had beer vats full of bud, and I tell that story.
Mixing vices right there.
Exactly. Well, when Bette Midler, the comedian, heard about that, she said, Barrie, it's your one-stop stop and shop for beer and pot.
Yeah, no kidding.
It was on the Howard Stern show when she said that. So because of these international comments by celebrities, it became a famous story.
Yeah.
But very little was known about it. So I dug into that using some of my legal background. I mean, getting legal transcripts is very tricky for a normal person or a journalist to do.
Yeah.
So that kind of gave me a bit of an advantage with that.
Yeah, and understanding even what they would be reading or some of the process or how this stuff could happen.
Yeah, and part of a lawyer is learning how to explain complicated things in a simple way that non-lawyers can understand.
Sure.
And for my third book, I'm actually not writing about crime at all. I'm writing about cannabis, marijuana, but I'm writing about the legal version of it. How it was legal in the distant past, and how it's on the way to becoming legal right now.
Yeah.
So it's called Weed World. It should be out around a year from now.
Weed World.
Yes. And after that, I want to go pure fiction. Pure art, leave the law completely behind. And
yeah, so you're really making a transition. You went into law from writing, and then you're going leaving law kind of gradually, piece by piece, further and further away, but then you're going right back to creative writing altogether.
Yes.
I want to just show your books here on the on camera. So here we've got Tip and Trade. This is there we go. There's Tip and Trade right there. This is the first book, and this is about people that you indeed went to school with, and you've got a picture in the front here.
I do.
I'm not going to show it on camera.
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
don't mind showing my afro from the early 90s.
But it's pretty wild because you're writing about your classmates in this book.
I knew these guys, and they were just regular people, and then they went on to do the largest insider trading fraud in Canadian history.
Wow.
They ripped off $12 million from Bay Street and Wall Street. And mixed into that, there's a story of crime, but there's also a story of these two guys. One guy who had it all, but basically gave it up for friendship. And the other guy, his friend, who seemed to ignore the rules of friendship, and he dragged his buddy down through preying on his trust, his vulnerabilities.
Wow.
So it's a psychological story of these two very different characters in an intense and finally toxic relationship.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I like the dedication here. You write, to the law students of tomorrow.
Well, it's a warning story because I can relate a bit to the greed that infects some lawyers. I read the book The Firm when I was in my first year at law school, and I want a fancy car, I want this and that, and I've had to sell my soul to the mafia. Fine. I'm just joking around, but you can see how people go down this path towards greed. A lot of my people I went to school with are not particularly happy in the legal world. quite a few are leaving, quite a few to become teachers,
Yeah.
because the money isn't necessarily worth the real suffering that lawyers have to go through.
The kind of life, yeah.
It's
yeah.
a really difficult life, and it changes you psychologically.
I believe it. So then you went on to Hidden Harvest. We'll bring this here up on the camera. This is your first pot book. There we go, Hidden Harvest. You can see there's the beer vat.
Yep.
Oh, it's so hard to do this in a monitor.
Yep, that's a
There
beer.
we go. So there it is.
Beer was brewed in there, and
yeah,
then they
so
grew some buds.
Beer and bud, all in one big, huge cylinder in Barrie. Incredible.
And there's some Hamilton connections to that. One of the major drug dealers in that book, he bought his weed from Hamilton and was in the process of setting up a huge grow-op in a 3-story building very close to Hamilton City Hall.
No kidding.
What building? I don't know.
Yeah.
But if you're walking around there and see a 3-story building, that could be the one.
Interesting. My
Yeah.
mind is going. Now, talking about City Hall and politics, you were very involved in the Ainslie Wood Neighborhood Association. You are still very involved in the Ainslie Wood Neighborhood Association.
Well, not necessarily the neighborhood association, the
Okay.
community as a whole. Yes.
Yeah, in the community. And so then you fought, and you kind of were at the forefront in some ways of this fight against the closure of Prince Philip. Tell us about that.
Well, it was. The closure of Prince Philip was the focal point of it, but there's more to that. I mean, in the area around McMaster, there's basically 2 large neighborhoods. There's Westdale, which almost everyone's heard about,
Yeah.
and there's Ainslie Wood, which is
Yeah.
an unfamiliar name to a lot of people. We're kind of onto the south and to the west of McMaster, while Westdale's the
Yeah.
other part. There's more people who live in Ainslie Wood, but however, Ainslie Wood has a bit more poverty, a bit more recent immigrants, student housing issues like that, and Westdale has 3 public schools, 2, maybe 3 community centers, a library,
Yeah.
a community association, the flowers on the streets. Well, Ainslie Wood had none of those things except one. We had one lonely elementary school, which was the
Yeah.
only government investment in our whole community.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the trustee for Westdale, Judith Bishop, who's leaving,
Yeah.
she decided to close our school down and take all the money to put the money into a school in her own neighborhood, where her neighbors go. And that might be fine with the rich elites of Westdale, but there are regular people in Ainslie who are really hurting by these decisions.
Yeah.
And it's like a form of class warfare.
Yeah.
These elitists like Judith Bishop are shutting down schools in poor neighborhoods, and the poor kids have to spend up to an hour in a bus,
Yeah.
which every study has shown hurts their learning. But people like Judith Bishop and her gang of elite supporters, they don't care.
Yep.
So Ainslie Wood is rising up. People say we have a chip on our shoulder. People in Westdale make fun of us, but we're still going, and we're not going to stop until we get some changes. And we're very happy with our new counselor, Aidan Johnson, who's
Yes.
totally committed to a
Yeah.
rec center. Good
Yeah.
for Aidan, and we're working very closely with Aidan.
We're hoping to get him on the show, actually. Aiden's a fantastic guy.
A great speaker, a great scholar. Got a
yeah.
lot of admiration for
Yeah.
him.
And actually, also another recovering attorney as well.
Yes, yes. So I think technically he kept his license.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because you started Juror. So we've got Keenan Loomis, the president of the Chamber of Commerce, a former lawyer, yourself. We got Aidan. Lots of lawyers doing all kinds of wonderful stuff in the community. So it's pretty cool. So I'm excited about these books. I'm going to be reading them. Looking forward to Weed World coming out soon. And where can people find these books if they are interested in reading more or find out more about you?
Last time I checked, they're at Chapters. I have a blog, which is Mark Coakley at I forget
We
what
can. I think it's probably we'll bring it on the
WordPress.com.
screen. There, WordPress.
And those are 2 ways. And the best way is to go to Urbanicity Magazine. I have a column there almost every month. The stuff you've talked about is very heavy stuff. The stuff I do in Urbanicity is generally very silly.
It's
light,
fun.
almost like Seinfeld or
Yeah.
these great humorists from the 30s. So I try and be very light in that. So yeah, I recommend people to check my columns at Urbanicity.
I recommend it too. Fantastic. Mark, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Martinus.
So we're now going to show you a video. This is a really, really cool piece of cinema produced by Mo Masudi, a producer here in town. It's called Hamilton 20.